noise in general.
Hello,
Bad.
welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, and I'm joined
Fucking
today
hell,
by
that's
Mr.
worse.
Tom ASMR Layton. Tom Layton,
Can't
how
believe
are you,
you've
bud?
I can't believe you've done this to me, mate.
Turn off the stream, turn off the podcast, throw the CD in the
Do it
sea.
again with the music. Yeah, it's fine. Dear. You alright?
Right, I'm great. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Me and Tom,
No, good.
to let you know, we're going to be talking through the Space Wolf Codex. Now, I know this seems a bit late. This is going to be our first look with people right now live discussing the Blood Angels Codex, which is on pre-order today. However, the way we go through it is we try and deep dive the stuff, specifically because I think sometimes when you just read through a codex kind of happenstance, you don't really grab all that info. So we've taken our time both with the Deathwatch one and the Marine one and the Necron one, and I've enjoyed the experience personally. Tom, I don't know about you.
I mean, we take our time so we can get the FAQs, right? So I'm sure like having those FAQs really helped us, work out what was in the book, and good, right?
Yeah, they've really done something
those
with
FAQs
those
are really useful.
Big shout out to everyone in the chat who has joined us live today. MJ Pickers, Nicky D. Williams, Primark. Oh, really nice to see you. Hope you're well. Lancer Leroy, Nicky D. Williams, DJ Batman, yes, great guy. I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining us, and thanks to everyone who supports us via The Honest Wargamer. Like, literally, this is all we do for work. Like, I know it's been a tough time for everyone, and it's just fucking super great that anyone supports this in any way, shape, or form. So you guys are brilliant, and it's just awesome. So thanks, and everyone who subscribes, like DJ Batman, and of course the podcast homies, or as I like to call them, my Hydro homies. Tom, I don't want to be rude. Like, I reckon that when we do the live show, like, as many people tune in for you and Nick and Nathan, probably loads for Nathan, Dan and James, but I really do feel like the Hydro homies are my bros.
I tune in for Nathan, I'm going to be honest. That's all I tune in for.
I also actually just built this whole thing for Nathan. It's a
it's
giant
just a
honey
vehicle
trap.
for Nathan. It's like the Trojan horse. You just wheel him into the city with his Antarctic giants. And he starts, like, sticking everything in his pants.
That's it. It's just a deep level conspiracy for those giants.
Yeah. The deep state is just Nathan.
Right. Oh, Pete Pratt. Can we all give some love to Pete in the chat right now, who currently is... Pete's a live music performer, but also runs a gaming store and studio and venue over in Northern Ireland. And lockdown's been particularly tough for everyone in the entertainment industry. So let's just throw some love to him. Not that anyone in the chat hasn't had a tough time, but I just want Pete to get some love because he's a lovely man. All right, Tom. Space Wolves. You love Space Wolves.
I have until the previous book, which sucked ass.
It did suck ass. So this is the Space Wolf Codex supplement, which means you can take everything that you find in the Space Marine book. So you need the Space Marine book and you need this book. And then, do you know what my initial thought was, Tom? Straight away,
sure.
You get the detachment. So the things you get, like, you basically get a Space Marine army with a different detachment ability that you're hard locked into, which gives you access to some stratagems, but not tons. Then Warlord traits, sagas, and a particular psychic discipline. But really, you win or lose on this first page, right? On the detachment abilities.
Well, even then, I'm still confused. So specifically, a successor chapter gets everything from the Space Wolves detachment ability, which is only +1 to hit in the first round of combat, and heroic intervention. The heroic intervention I particularly like. The +1 to hit is kind of meh when you compare it to the Blood Angels one, and also the +1 to wound you can get from being a successor anyway. You also don't get the named characters, obviously, as well from Space Wolves. Basically, you've got the main codex, Space Wolves, successors, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of how it ends up working. But I am still confused by this first page because if you take, I don't know, like, hold up. So Tom wrote some notes at 3 a.m. and the sentences don't make sense.
Late night Tom.
Yeah, late night Tom.
So what did late night Tom say?
There are a few things where I was confused about. So basically, it specifically says here, if you have a Space Wolf successor chapter, then for the purposes of using any Space Wolf detachment rules, you can replace the Space Wolf's keywords in all instances with the name of your chosen chapter. So I guess that just means that the detachment abilities, which are Savage Fury, and you can give Swift Claws, Berserk Charge, and Headstrong, you can get those on
which
your
are on
successor chapter,
which are then on page 61 instead of just being right there at the start.
Those are on 4. Yeah, so basically at the start it says 42, check the detachment abilities. Detachment abilities just says check page 61. So now I'm going to go and check page 61, and a lot of these are just very weird.
So Berserk charges if this unit has either Hunter's Unleashed chapter tactic,
don't know
or
what
has
that
the
is.
Inheritors of the Primarch Successor
I
chapter
don't even know where I
tactic.
can find that.
Where the fuck do I find those? Then each time it fights, it made the charge move this turn. Then until that fight is resolved, add 1 to the attacks characteristic of models, including Wolf God models. Wait, but is that +1 on top of...
Space Wolf one? I think it is, isn't it? Hunters Unleashed is the specific Space Wolf chapter tactic, right?
Yes.
It's in it. Why not just this is a problem that you get when you just know rules by what they do and not their names.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't know them by the names as well, right? Because it's just ludicrous to try and
I don't know, man. You watch Professional League of Legends and you think, and they're always using the names of the abilities.
Yeah, but come
I'm
on,
just like,
there's more in
is
here.
that?
There's more in the Marine book than the whole of LOL. Yeah, listen, I love that they talk fast, but there's more in this.
It's like, there's literally no reason to ever know the names of those abilities.
It's
Whereas
true.
This one, you might have a reason to.
Yeah, Hunters Unleashed is
Hunters
the chapter tactic. Hunters Unleashed is the chapter tactic.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Right, so we'll go back to page 61, unfortunately not 69. And basically, if they have Hunter Unleashed chapter tactic, or it has the Inheritors of the Primarch Successor chapter tactic, then each time it fights, it gets to make fights. If it made a charge move this turn until the fight was resolved, adds 1 to the attacks characteristics of the models. So that's an addition to the +1 for that Marines get for charging anyway.
Yes, it will be. Yes, Inheritors of Primarch though is the one that basically just allows you to act as though you are that chapter, though, right? For all intents and purposes. So
they basically get +2 attacks on the charge.
Yeah, they do, and +1 to hit.
Okay, and +1 to hit, and then and then the important point here is the detachment ability is exploding sixes in melee. So every time you make an attack in melee and it scores an unmodified hit roll of 6, it scores an additional hit.
Ability, sorry, mate?
In Savage Fury. While the Assault Doctrine is active for your army, each model in this unit makes a melee attack.
What page is that on, mate?
Page 45, bro.
Okay, I did read all these, I swear. I'm just... What is that?
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there it is, yeah, okay, that's fine. I just remember a few of those rules on the detachment ability section were specifically for certain units. So, for example, Swift Claw Bikers gain Headstrong and Berserk charge abilities, implying that you don't already get it as base. But I think Savage Fury is one of those things where you'd all get it. Although I'm going to double check it now.
Yeah, as long as you're like in combat charging. Hey, sorry again. What up? Anyway,
just get it. I'm very confused. It doesn't tell me when, it doesn't tell me where it says that I get that rule that they just listed.
Which one?
So Savage Fury.
Oh, so Savage Fury is on page 45.
Yeah, I found the rule. I just don't know how I get it.
Oh, you get it if you have a whole detachment. So if every unit in your army, excluding unaligned units, has a Space Wolves keyword, then every unit that has the Combat Doctrines ability and is in a Space Wolves attachment gains Savage Fury ability below. Interestingly, they've emboldened Space Wolves twice, yeah, but they haven't emboldened Combat Doctrines or Savage Fury. I feel like if you were formatting this, Twitch chat, back me up on this, yes or no? Oh, AOSP.
Wait, does that say that you gain Savage Fury? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, it's one of the bullet points in the first section rather than actually being the top heading. Well, okay, fine.
Yeah. Big shout out to Savage Pete for donating £3.50 for the show. Thanks, man. Get yourself a Tiptree strawberry conserve jam. Woohoo! A Tiptree. Oh, nice. I will do that. I'm big into jam at the minute. The jam thing makes me laugh. All right, so Space Wolves basically +1 to hit, plus an additional +1 to attack on the charge. They can heroically intervene as if they were a character, and also exploding sixes to hit in melee is a thing. So what I was trying to say, Tom, sorry, is that I feel like when you are picking up any of these fucking power armor books, it's literally like you look at it and you think, cool, exploding sixes to hit. Is that enough to take this whole book? Like, you can stop here sometimes. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
I feel like a lot of the time you just you end up comparing it to a lot of the other success books, right? You compare it to things like White Scars and Salamanders and Death Watch now as well. And I'm not sure about it in terms of strength. What I'm more fussed about is it having flavor and having things that you can do that are interesting, right? Mm-hmm. Does it have that? I think it's better than the last book. I think there's a lot more in here that you can do, and specifically, I think a lot of that's down to the stratagems, because in the stratagems are actually things that you can do now that have multiple uses, right? So I've made a list of quite a few of the stratagems I quite like.
Please talk to me about them.
So you've got Go for the Throat, which is 2 CP for an army-wide point of AP. So if you're on the Assault Doctrine, if you are in melee and you roll a 6 to wound, you get an additional point of AP.
Pretty
So
decent.
it's decent, but
You're
you need a lot
already
of stuff
getting
in
plus
there,
1
right?
AP anyway, right?
Yeah, you are, because you're in the Assault Doctrine. So it'd be AP -2 on a 6 to wound.
That's a
So
lot of
that's
stack.
actually
Go on.
yeah, and when you're getting lots of attacks as well, because you've got +2 attacks, rerolling ones, hitting on a +1. Now it is only unmodified rolls of 6 to wound. There we go. I just need to fix that because I just got rid of some words. But at the same time, it's like if you really need to hit something hard, that's quite nice. But it's one of those where it's very swingy because you're spending 2 CP, which is quite expensive, and even when you're reliant upon sixes, and it's only 2 CP because it's an army-wide thing, right? And you've still got to wait for turn 3 because unlike Death Watch, you can't proc Assault Doctrine like instantly.
No, but I do
So
feel like that and some of the other stuff that you see inside this book, you really start to like you get something which is a little bit rarer now. Well,
yeah,
on some of the stuff I've seen, and what I mean by that is when we saw someone like when we saw Nick, let's say, taking his noise marines, making them toughness 5, making them like get +1 to wound, making them reroll to hit, and then making them shoot twice. You know, stacking all those CP and all those abilities into one punch unit. I feel like Space Wolves themselves, I know that is a stratagem, so it's only going to be used on one unit, but their core stuff is like big bonuses, really. You know, like an additional, +1 attack, exploding 6s, and then that AP, which they already want when they're in assault. And then now
yeah,
you've got
100%.
there's another unit that you can almost Death Star up, and I assume that there's a fight twice stratagem.
I believe so. Yeah, I'm just going to. Well, it's in the base Marine book, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can just use that one.
Exactly. So I feel like that there's a unit that you can take that will clear pretty much anything from some space on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you come out with the Savage Strike stratagem, which is +1 to wound. So it costs 2 CP if the enemy unit has 6 or more people in it, and 1 if it has fewer than that. But it's still +1 to wound, which is incredibly valuable, especially when you're not getting it base because you're a Space Wolf and not a Blood Angel.
Yes.
Although if you take a successor, can you stack plus to wound modifiers? You can't stack to hits.
I don't. I
think you can
assume
stack
that
to
it's
wounds.
no. I assume that they've probably put it as all to hits and to wounds. Like I don't think you can stack to wounds. No.
Okay,
I haven't.
worth a check. Because if you take the successor chapter and when you take +1 to wound on that anyway, it's just like, well, fine, you don't ever need to use this. But at the same time, if you haven't, that's fantastic because +1 to wound is so valuable, especially when you're already proccing a bunch of attacks, right?
Yeah. Agreed. Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, the additional attack plus exploding 6s means that you're going to generate a lot. But I guess the real question is that the strength of the book, like ultimately? But yeah. Oh, what other stratagems did you like?
So one of the other ones I wanted to talk about was Pack Hunters, and it's not because I think it's necessarily amazing, but I think it sets a precedent that I quite like, which is one stratagem that does a lot of things for a unit. So a lot of the time I've been complaining about things like the Defiler in the past, who are saying you're paying a premium to do things you don't want to do, and it's made a similar point about the Nightbringer on the show on Thursday, where you're essentially paying for things that it's not ever going to make use of. But with this one, I feel like the cost is justifiable for the first part, and then the second part is just like a nice bonus where you physically couldn't buff the first bit anymore, so you just had to find another thing to make it a little bit nicer for that. Like the first bit was too good for it to be 1 CP, but maybe if you were going to put it up to 2, you needed something else in there. So it feels like we've just chucked another rule on top of it just because. And what Pack Hunters is until the end of your turn, you use it in the charge phase, and you select a unit one enemy unit within engagement range of any Space Wolves units from your army. And until the end of that turn, each time a friendly Space Wolf beast or cavalry unit declares a charge that targets the selected unit, roll an additional d6 and discard 1 of the dice. So effectively, it's a 3d6 charge -1. And then when you're re-rolling the charge with your CP, you can re-roll all 3 dice as well. So it makes your charge very, very reliable with your things like your Thunderwolf Cavalry, like your Fenrisine Wolves. But when people are running things like Thunderwolf Cavalry anyway, I think that's really, really good because it's just another way of you getting a reliable charge without necessarily having to spend a CP to re-roll it, right?
Yeah, and also this stratagem value has now gone up because we know that, like if you've seen, Blood Angels have lost that stratagem.
Yeah, bro.
So
Yeah.
so now it's flipped on its head. Like and ultimately, Blood Angels are very good in combat, and Space Wolves are very good in combat. But you always saw Blood Angels because they had the +1 to wound. Like they just had a whole bunch of stuff that was very dedicated to combat. But I would say that it was the relics and the 3d6 charge which really made them like a big thing.
Oh yeah, dude. Like you
Yeah.
could just stick a detachment in an army and say, hey, now you've got to worry about these big free smashy boys coming down and just whacking something in the head.
Yeah, reliably, and they'll achieve
Yeah.
that. Like, and
Oh yeah,
reliability obviously
100%.
produces effect. So now, like, I feel like Space Wolves have like. I'm not saying that they've reversed because there's a whole bunch of units to take into account and some other stuff, but
Mhm.
there's something going on there where Space Wolves have come up because of that, and Blood Angels have come down. So I think
Yeah.
it's definitely worth noting.
That said, Space Wolves themselves haven't lost everything that they got previously, so they've still kept Cloaked by the Storm, which previously was a 6-inch bubble, which protected your army after you cast a Psychic Power. I can't remember if it was +1 to your armor save or if it was -1 to hit, but either way, right now it's -1 to hit, and it's similar to the Death Watch relic we were talking about the other day, where it was so long as any model is within range, then you'll get this for the entire unit, right?
Mm.
So it's for 2 CP, you cast a Psychic Power, and then you just pop Cloaked by the Storm, and now everything within 6 inches is -1 to hit, which is now the cap because you can't get past +1 to hit anyway.
Mm.
So that's really nice. But I think it encourages a style of play you're not necessarily going to use your Space Wolves in terms of castling up. I think there are situations where you can do it. For example, if you want to just spam Terminators and just shoot people, I think that could be okay. If you want to run Wolfing at people, I think that's quite good as well, mainly because you can still string them out. But I think with things like most like Thunderwolf Cavalry and what have you, you want to be sending them off doing their own thing. You don't necessarily want to be bubbling around the board because you've got a thick base and you can't go through ruins, which means that you're going to have to be like full on skittling around the ruins, which is a bit of a problem, especially when you're waiting for your ass to catch up because you've got so many big bases.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's a lot to be said now. Like, previously, things like Thunderwolf Cavalry, for example, there was a lot of output in those units. But now even your simple Intercessor Squad inside Space Wolves have got a lot of attacks and an okay strength, and then you got some AP. So, like, there's just a lot going on. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, the variants or...
Yeah, sorry, just Wolf Brother 41 just said in the chat, if you take +1 to wound success tactic, you lose a +1 on attack on the charge with a Blood Claws. Like, oh
Blood
no,
Fangs.
but no, Blood Claws, they're a troop unit, and I'm just like, oh no, but fucking horror. Better not take that then, boys. It's all over. Back it up.
All right, what else did you like from the stratagem section?
So we've still got a couple of Swiss Army stratagems in here. I really like Countercharge, which is a 6-inch heroic intervention for your army. So even if you're not taking the what's it Majobi, the Space Wolves actual chapter tactic, you've still got that threat, and people still need to respect it because you have access to that stratagem. Because you can now 6-inch heroically intervene by just picking a unit and going in.
Which again, like, there's a 25% increase on its efficacy. Nice.
Efficacy, yeah.
Efficacy. Because obviously the boards are smaller. Like, so, like, that doesn't, like, already it was a thing. Now it's 25% better. Like, because there's 25% less room. So your opportunity cost goes up. Which I think sometimes they haven't really thought about if you think about it when it comes to, like, micromanagement comp play. Which is fine. Like, I'm not saying it's like game breaker or anything like that. It's more just like that was already strong. It's stronger now than it previously was. Like,
yeah, but not even just the size of the board though. It's about where the objectives end up being, right? So if you look at a lot of the WTC boards, the objectives are mandated outside of 3 inches of the ruins, right?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter because I heroically intervened 6.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me a lot. It reminds me a lot of when we were at Capital City Bloodbath and we commentated on Jim Vessel's game, and he put his Demon Prince, his Khorne Demon Prince, just behind a line of Plague Bearers, and his ability to just heroically intervene when the knight hit the Plague Bearers meant then that the big Khorne Demon Prince just smoshed.
To be fair, Eric did balls that up, but that's
agreed. I'm not saying it's not. But it's like, like just like you said. Not even previously, because obviously still in ITC use objectives, but now those objectives are locked. The objectives are there.
Yes.
You know that you can pile in 6 there. You know that guy wants to get onto that objective. There's so much play in that it's like far more effective than you realise. It's super cool.
Absolutely.
Super
Especially
cool.
if your opponent's not careful with it, because you can still do it because you now measure from the edge of an objective rather than from the centre, right? So actually the diameter of the objective is slightly over 6 inches.
Yeah.
So you could just be clipping the very edge on the far side, but unless you're like really careful, unless you actually know that and do that, you're going to get hit. But equally, even if you do know that, how many models can you get on that edge without while staying outside of heroic intervention range?
Yes.
It's like 3, maybe maximum, maybe even 1. I've not tested it. It depends on
No,
the
I
size of
haven't.
your base.
Yeah,
So
it does depend on the size of your base. But like, and what's also interesting when you heroically intervene, like everyone, so everyone in Space Wolves can heroically intervene
yeah,
as if they were characters. That means all of your obsec units are heroically intervening onto the objective in your opponent's turn.
that said though, that is the chapter tactic. So if you take a successor, you can't do that. But what I'm saying with this is you still get access to the stratagem. So your opponent still has to respect that heroic intervention, even if you don't actually have it. Just because you can use a stratagem and then do it anyway, because you have the potential for any of your units to do it.
This is where I need to tangent a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
Thoughts on having some sort of megaphone and or loudspeaker that every time I heroically intervene, I'm just like, heroic intervention!
Well, also, Rob, this actually costs 0 CP if you're a character. So you'll get a lot of those. So basically, you can just extend your character heroic intervention by 3 inches.
Well, which is pretty
and
good.
the only cost is the opportunity cost of not using this on something else, rather than it being a CP cost.
That's interesting, especially like if you give yourself like your opponent like a Sophie's Choice setup, where it's like, do you want me to pile in for free with this unit, or heroically intervene with this unit, or do you want me to heroically intervene but have to spend a resource in my CP? You know, like what's worse? And also, it's an obsec unit that I'm heroically intervening with. That's quite good, actually. I think there's some massive play around that, especially like if you did stuff with any of the Phobos stuff. Where you make your opponent's stuff non-obsec.
Yeah,
like
just kill it. It's fine. It's not an issue.
Anyway, that's a good one. That's a great one.
Yeah. Another good one I like is Bestial Nature. So if I told you, Rob, you could get +1 AP on all your weapons in melee for 1 CP, what would you think?
I'm into it. I'm into it hard.
Okay. That is basically what this is, because it is 1 CP to give the unit Assault Doctrine for the turn. Now, it does mean that they don't have Tactical or Devastator for their shooting phase. But if you've got a bunch of attacks, it's still pretty good value, especially at +1 to hit, right? So let's say you're charging in a unit with 40 attacks, you hit, it's too early in the morning for me to be doing maths, but let's say hit 33 times. You then wounding on 4, so you've got 17 wounds. Now, they've all got AP -1, which is a big deal.
Yes, that is a big deal. And as someone who's ran a lot of Orc boys, I tell you what, I would kill, a small baby, like a weak baby, not like one that will grow strong, just a weak baby, and one of the fugly ones. And then, but for AP1, oh my god, I'd give my back teeth. For AP1,
especially when you're not like getting those wound procs. It just makes every wound that you do more valuable, right? And then you could stack it with +1 to wound as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I honestly, like, AP1's a deal for me, like, because the amount of times I've run into Tin Can Marines or Custodes, and I'm just no. So nightmare situation for me.
It also means you've got that agency in turn 1 and 2 as well, where you previously wouldn't have it, because you haven't been able to swap to Assault Doctrine yet. So in turn 2, you can charge with like 1 big unit. I don't know, Grey Hunters or something. I don't know. I doubt you'd be doing that, but beside the point. You're still able to do something by just swapping it to the Assault Doctrine. It's good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Radical.
It's good.
Yeah. I love that.
I've got 2 more strats I really like, but I just want to quickly cover. The first is Keen Senses is back. So if you remember the last book, which I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, Keen Senses was shoot something as it arrives on the table. Notice how those have been phased out recently, by the way.
What's been phased out?
Well, things like Auspex Scan.
Yeah.
I think we still have it in Marine book, but we don't have it in the Necron book, do we?
I don't think we have.
Do we
have it in? Do we?
I haven't even had a look, mate. I'll tell you what. I'll have a quick research on that when I get a second, and I'll see if we've still got an Auspex Scan. In the meantime, chat can have a look for us and see if Auspex Scan is still a thing. But either way, this has now been changed. So it is now you get... So look, my notes are a little bit scuffed here as well. So you use this in the shooting phase, like 1 Space Wolves unit that is infantry, biker, or cavalry, and until the end of a turn, you can ignore any or hit roll, ballistic skill, and weapon skill modifiers. And each time you make a charge roll of that unit, you can ignore any or all modifiers to the charge roll.
Okay.
For 1 CP, it's pretty decent just to ignore all the modifiers. And also, if you are charging into something like, I remember talking about the Deathwatch stratagem against orcs the other day, where it's -2. That's a big deal if you want to charge. I know you're not getting back. I know you're Space Wolf, so it's not affecting you. But if you keep on with this trend of reducing charge ranges, it's one of those things where you can just override anything your opponent can do apart from screen.
Well, I mean, and it also just does, like, you spend a CP on a strat, like you just said, where you're going to roll 3d6. Oh, no, wait, that's not going to stop. It's not going to stop the strat, or is it going to make... It's not going to make
No,
you
it's
back
not a
to
modifier.
2d6.
It's not a modifier, no.
Not a modifier,
It's
you're just rolling an extra dice.
Yeah, also
okay.
Fit Nick as Goddess is still in the Space Marine book, so thank you.
Hey, Fit Nick. So still... okay, so so the Necrons have lost the ability to, like, shoot at stuff that's deep striking, basically.
Yeah, well, I don't think they ever had it in the first place, but it was one of those where we've had to remove it from here because you're getting access to it in the Space Marines book anyway.
I mean, it was a core component of like absolutely top tier Eldar list edition early into 8th.
Forewarned,
like yeah, it was like a strong like ability to like very much like we've talked about pre-game move units like Nurglings, Phobos Marines, anything like that, anything that can like take board space early.
Absolutely,
I think is just like a core strong mechanic. I'm saying strong now. I'm never saying strong again. I'm only saying strong. How do we feel about that?
I feel good about it. It's fine. It's all good. Yeah, get fucked, Tanglefoot. Yeah, fuck off. The last one I wanted to go through was Runic Wards. It's not massively exciting, but it's one of those. Often you have stratagems that pop up in books, and when you just see detachments that specifically just there to give you that stratagem. A good example is the Vect stratagem. Another good example is Graia in Admech, giving you a 4+2 stop psychic powers.
Mm-hmm.
This is another one of those. So it's 12-inch range deny for 1 CP for all of your units. So all of your Space Wolf units have the possibility to deny psychic power for 1 CP.
On a 4-up?
No, it's just deny it.
Oh, wow. So you just roll off versus them?
Yeah, you just roll off. But you use a stratagem after the psychic test passed. So if you see like a psychic test, it was passed on like a 6, and it's an important psychic power, and when your opponent decides we're not going to re-roll it, you can go, Runic Wards. Straight in. Just drop it on the deck.
That's good. That's really good, obviously.
So not only is it one of those where you can just drop it on someone and just remove a psychic power because you've seen what they've rolled, but also now your opponent has to be thinking, is that high enough? Can he deny that? All the time, right? It's another one of those where you're having to constantly respect it.
I think one of the things Nick brought up on Tuesday, which I think was Thursday, was a super valid point, is we don't generally see, or maybe it was you, Tom, sorry, but we don't generally see those like absolute not kill shot the stratagem, so that's a bad example, but we don't see those like game-changing strats that we necessarily previously saw, which are like absolutely overriding, right? So I think people are generally sat on more CP now. Like it's more situational opportunity cost than it is necessarily like we often saw, in my opinion, in 8 a front loading of CP usage. It was just like turn 2, I'm burnt out of CP, or you'd be saving it for like certain turns. Whereas now I feel like that there's more generally knocking around. So even I get you, like even if it's just like a 6, you're like, okay, I'll give that a blast. But even if it's not, it's their important psychic power.
Respect it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an important psychic power. They've rolled a 9. You think, well, I've got CP in the bank, and if I stop it, I change the course of the game. So really, like, there's that risk versus reward, but just the ability to do so is significant.
Absolutely, just because your opponent has to then play around it. It's the same as a heroic intervention, the 6-inch one, and the normal one where everyone can heroically intervene 3 inches, right? Because your opponent has the option to do that for any of their units.
I really like some of this stuff so far.
I
really do.
Yeah, there's a lot of toolbox stuff in there. It's not quite as fun as the 5th edition one. I have to.
What's interesting is Space Wolves, who you'd think about just being like absolute strong, like mad bastards, running forward and just like axing people in the head. Feel like they have more utility just based on their stratagems than the Death Watch. Like Death Watch have got more kind of like overarching tactics and the ability to choose doctrines. However, the strats wise, it feels like Space Wolves are more like applicable on the tabletop. Like you've got some more like utility, which I think is good. Space
Wolves are very much in the lore about they tell you their opponent what they're going to do and then they just do it. It's very much a theme in the Horus Heresy Space Wolf books, where it's like they're very honest about it. They say,
or they do exactly what they're not told to do. Yeah, arrest. Magnus, not
they turn up
Glass's planet. Yeah,
I mean they turn up. They're like, we're going to glass a planet, and guess what? They glass the planet. So it's like, well, there it is.
Not what they were meant to do. That was not their orders.
But they said they were going to do it, and we did it. So sound whatever. All
what
good.
An idiot. Not an idiot.
Yeah, it's fine. Warlord
all
traits.
right. Yeah, please. What stands out to you?
What I really like here is Hunter, which is you get +1 to your advance and charge rolls made for your Warlord, and your Warlord can charge in a turn in which it advances or falls back.
Okay.
So you effectively get him the same as you do for Evil Sons, but you can advance charge all the time, which is lovely. So you stick him on a Thunderwolf, you move 12 inches, you then advance up to 7 inches, so that's like 19 inches, and then you charge up to 12 inches, but with a +1. So it's very, very consistent, very, very quick, very good for whacking things, especially when you talk about the Space Wolf secondary that you can get here as well. So just for context, what we're talking about it is the Space Wolf secondaries, you get free VP every time that you 2 or more Space Wolf units charge in a turn.
Okay,
now,
so should we jump to do these just generally, then we can jump back. Sure. That one is heroic challenge? No.
I'll just get to the page because it's buried in the middle of a Crusade rules because
it's 53.
Ah, for fuck's sake, Rob. Buried in front of a Crusade rules. It's just called Chapter Approved Rules. Okay, sound.
Yeah.
So it's called Warrior Pride. It's a progressive objective. So score free VP at the end of your turn if 2 or more Space Wolf units from your army are within engagement range of any enemy units or have completely discharged this turn.
Oh my god, it's even easier. You don't even... I was like, completing charges every turn. That's that's tough.
I mean, it's even easier when you could just fall out and charge like this dude.
Well, yeah, I mean, this requires you are within engagement range of enemy units, so you don't even need to have charged. You just are fighting, if that makes sense, which is hilarious. Can I say thanks to Pragmatic for subscribing? He says, wishing everyone a nice Saturday from Singapore, and also fuck you buddies, which I appreciate. And also thanks to the Bomb Squig for following us, which puts me... There's some existential dread now that I'm running from the Bomb Squig.
Oh, mate. I love
so Warrior Pride's insane. You basically, if I'm fighting this turn with 2 units, I score 3 victory points.
It's still hard to max though, because it's quite tricky to get it turn 1, which is why I like Hunter, because then you can just advance and charge with a +1 on the advance and the charge. So you've got 1 unit in combat already, right?
Yeah.
So it's just about then finding another unit that can then go and do it. Maybe you get some curses in there, you never know.
Well, you just maybe take a shit like throwaway like unit like turn 1. Do you know what I mean? Like because you only have to. Are within the game at the end of your turn. They do have to survive. That is a thing.
They do. So don't just charge like. In fact, no, do charge for Nightbringer. You'll probably survive. So it's just like fine, but it's the best one. I think the only thing with it is I like Hunter, but it also encourages you to fall out. But so then you'll lose a point on your Marine secondary, which you're always going to be taking, which is Oath of Moment. So you get 2 points for standing in the center. You get 1 point for not falling out or failing morale checks. You get 1 point for killing a character or vehicle. But at the same time, you can afford to do that for every vehicle in your opponent's army. Yeah. So if there's a vehicle there, you just say, well, I'll fall out this turn, not get that point, and then go and whack that vehicle and get myself a different point later.
Yeah, by the way, I love these secondaries. I love how optimistic they are with score 2 victory points if any character units were destroyed by Space Wolves unit during this battle round. If no character units were destroyed, but a character unit suffered 3 or more wounds as a result of attacks made
just in case.
By Space Wolves unit, score 1 victory point. It's just like if you kind of touch a character, but hope that they've got at least.
If you're at least putting the effort in, we'll give you like half a point.
Yeah,
that's how it is. It's fine.
Also, you need to hope that they've got monsters, either monsters or characters, and get together them. You're like, cool. I'm never playing with that ever. Did you any of the other?
So basically, don't take psychers, monsters, characters, vehicles. Didn't they say they wanted to rework vehicles and make them good again?
How do you mean?
Well, in the preview for 9th edition, they were saying, we want to... Anything a monster can do, a vehicle can do, and vice versa. And also vehicles can do... vehicles are going to be way better. And now you just give me a bunch of secondaries that encourage me to kill them.
Well, I really do... I mean, vehicles were still very applicable, like, very, very relevant in 8th, I think.
Oh, yeah. I think we're talking more about battle tanks and what have you, though, right? Like, Lehman Russ is getting tagged up in close combat and all that gubbins, but...
Well, but they're way less effective now. Because really, you ask yourself... I think with 9th edition, you ask yourself, okay, there's a tank that does does X amount of damage, because there really aren't any utility tanks, truthfully. It does X amount of damage, but can I just get the same points-wise, but also bodies on the board at the same time?
What's that Imperial Knight that gives reroll 1s to hit for all other Imperial Knights?
I mean, okay, that is utility.
Nice the garbage.
Yeah.
It's like the only one.
And also, Nick is right. They did say a lot of things. They also said... I'm still looking
Some
forward
of
to
the things contradicted some of the other things, and then it was fine.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that army roster.
I'm looking forward to having an app I can open. That'd be nice.
I actually don't even know. Is the app currently? What's the state of the app? Does it work ATM?
I'm hoping everyone will forget about it.
At this stage, everyone's just using anyway. All right, reset the clock on that. By the way. So sorry, Tom. Did you see any of the other? Did you read any of the secondaries? Or
well, I did, and I didn't like them, so I forgot about them immediately.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah,
I mean,
welcome.
I quite like the competitive and match play player's brain. They kind of go, they read something, they go, I'm never gonna read that again in my life until the next edition.
Yeah, you gotta conserve brain space, dude.
You do. You do.
Yeah.
Actually, I think that's one of the things that was really important about the Death Watch book. You know, like we read through it, and it's like, cool. This warlord trait is important. This psychic power is important. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%.
Like it's actually, there's a lot of gumph around it, but you can streamline learning these things, I think. So we're back to warlord traits then.
Yeah, so the warlord traits all come with a saga as well. So we've gone through Hunter, and then Hunter's saga is effectively, if you can complete a deed, Rob, the doorbell just rang.
Ooh.
Then you get, it might be presents. While a friendly, just toys for myself that I purchased. While a friendly Space Wolves core unit is within 6 inches of this model, that unit is eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which it advanced. And also, while a Space Wolves core unit with the Swift Hunter's ability is within 6 inches, that unit is eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which they fell back. So the main thing is, if you complete this super hard deed, then all core units within 6 inches of your warlord will be able to advance and charge, Rob.
Okay, that's huge.
Pretty insane. But you have to complete the deed. Do you know what the deed is, Rob?
What is the deed?
Charge something. And so long as you've done that, you can get that buff for the rest of the game.
And which one's that? Hunter?
Hunter.
While friendly special calls within 6 inches model, within only, that unit's eligible to declare a charge in the turn in which it advanced. So you could... Does it activate immediately? So, for example, could I charge...
At the end of the phase. It activates at the end of a phase.
Right, okay.
So
I can't charge and immediately gain it for the units behind me.
Yeah. So you basically end up as a taxi. You charge something, or even if you take something like Incursors or something, right, or Infiltrators, you charge up with your warlord. Everything else runs up behind you, and now you're in the center of all this crap because you just charged something, and you can fall out and charge yourself, and everything around you can advance and charge.
Okay, all right, that's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, I thought it was decent. I don't think it's great game breaking, but I think it's one of those where, you know what, that's pretty good.
I think there's a big variety between like something's game breaking and it's going to define how an army plays.
Yes,
you know, like very much like the battle trait and like the detachment tactic. And also its inherent chapter tactic is they're just going to define how the army plays, end of, and that plays into how the army plays, which is obviously excellent. It's like, it's really good. It's really good.
Yeah. While you're on that, we can go to relics, because there's one that stacks really well with this, which is the Wolfenstone. The Wolfenstone used to give you extra attacks. What it does now is it gives you a reroll charge bubble within 6 inches. When you've got all of that, it's just like your entire army just whoosh straight across the board.
So you're falling back and charging. You're re-rolling charges.
You're advancing and charging.
Yeah, and you're advancing and charging.
Yes.
You're getting VP just for charging.
You are getting VP for charging.
You're getting VP just for charging. You're getting extra attacks just for charging as well. That's pretty wild. Like very fun as well. Also quite fun with the idea of like taking a bunch of jump pack Space Wolves. And then being able to use Hammer of Wrath like multiple turns. So like Hammer of Wrath, Fallout, Hammer of Wrath. That would be quite fun.
I don't think you can fall out with the Swift Claws or the jump back guys. I think you can only fall out with a Warlord. But it doesn't matter. You just kill it, so it's fine. It's not a big issue, especially with +1 to wound as well, and Hammer of Wrath, and additional point of AP for Assault Doctrine. Or alternatively, rather than going for the reroll charges, you could make your Warlord itself more of a beefsteak, Rob. You could give it the Pelt of the Beowulf.
Wait, no, I want to hear about that, Tom. But Yes Meatballs has just brought up a real good point. Like, listen, like the saga of Beowulf, or like Achilles, mighty sagas which have passed down through thousands of years. I don't remember the saga of the guy that ran at the other guy. Like the charge is not
technically the Battle of Marathon was a charge. You just charged like 33 miles.
It's a fucking big charge.
A big charge.
That's like a
That's
46
that's
charge.
a big roll. That is.
That's a big roll.
So there's a system for role playing called Deadlands.
Mm-hmm.
And effectively what it is rather than rolling a d20, you roll like a d4, d6, d8, depending upon your skill. And if you roll like the highest number, you get to roll again.
Oh, wow.
So I want to see how many times this guy rolled a 4 on a d4 to make the 33-mile-inch charge.
Can I just say, by the way, thanks to Bob Squig for subscribing. First time. Welcome to the fucking Jam Gang. The fucking Grot team.
Excellent choice, sir.
Yeah, excellent choice, sir. Welcome back, baby. Also, big shout out to Mamdare in the chat, who's just come back from a fire call because he's a volunteer firefighter.
That's pretty
big
cool.
love to him for saving the people. Charge of the Light Brigade.
Yeah, but they all died.
They did all die.
They did all die.
They did all die. What I really like is the tale of the Charge of the Light Brigade, which I think is like based in the 1800s, and then we get to 1900s World War One, and they're like, you know, military English history is like kind of raised on some of these stories, including the Charge of the Light Brigade, and then you know, the sergeant's like, right lads, just run at the enemy, and they're like, what about that tale, sir, that saga of the Charge of the Light Brigade? He's like, don't worry about it, it's just allegorical, it's not important. He just ran at the machine guns.
The only people that could make it look like reasonably good were the Polish. Go on, Poland. We all love Poland.
Interesting facts, the Americans, when they were over in the Second World War, had like much lower reduced casualties because they moved around in tiny little squads and took cover as they were moving up across the battlefields instead of running in a straight line. Interesting.
That seems pretty OP.
It does.
Terrain rules are too powerful.
All right, so sorry, I just wanted to talk about sagas because they see the rest of the sagas is easy to achieve.
No, they are pretty easy. I feel like you could do some really hard to achieve sagas in Crusade, but I don't know how you meant to achieve a really hard to achieve saga in 5 turns, and if you were, how good the reward would be, right?
Yes, like Deed of the Wolfkin is an enemy model is destroyed as a result of a melee attack made by this model. That's not particularly heroic in a game or setting where you're killing stuff all day.
So someone's done the maths on me for that Deadlands joke. Apparently, it's just under 2.1 million inches, so approximately 525,000 fours.
33 miles is just under 2.1 million inches, approximately 5,225.
Oh, my word.
Thanks, Aladdin, saying that's
Appreciate
great.
that one. That's pretty good. Yeah.
All right. So you were talking about relics, were you?
Yeah, it was. I was talking about -1 to hit to wound in melee. For your opponent hitting your warlord if you want to make a big beefer. Problem is that big beefer is still weaker than the beefer you'd get in salamanders. So if you just want an army built around one big beefer, you probably just go for that, unfortunately. That said, Armor of Rust is back. I do love the Armor of Rust. We all know I love the Armor of Rust. Mm-hmm. So that is the bearer has a save characteristic of 2+ and a 4+ invulnerable save. And at the start of the fight phase, you can select one enemy unit within engagement range of the bearer. And that unit is not eligible to fight this phase until after all eligible units from your army have done so.
All right, so I've got a question about this. Right?
Yeah.
Is that really this good? Because and I'll give you my problem with it, and then you can tell me what you think.
Yeah, go for it.
It's because I already get to go first. So like, what's this giving me?
So it's basically stopping your opponent from being able to interrupt on you.
Okay.
So basically, if you're charging 2 units, one of them has the Armor of Rust and one of them doesn't. You can fight with the unit that doesn't have the Armor of Rust first, and then your opponent can't interrupt on the guy with the Armor of Rust.
And ultimately you're multi-charging because you're having an army predominantly made up of combat to take benefit from the battle.
And you're charging more than one unit, right? So basically it means that you could order it in a way in which you now can't get interrupted on and whacked.
Okay, all right, no, I see that. Yeah. Especially with someone like, especially also, I'm assuming combat previously, last edition, was a lot more like there was a combat unit knocking around, but you were really getting into the meat and potatoes of the gun line. Whereas now, like, everyone's bringing some combat threats. Yeah.
Alternatively, I believe this now also gives a 2+ armor save where it didn't before. I think that's an improvement, but I'm not certain. I think it didn't come with a 2+ last time, but I could be wrong. Additionally, because now the person whose turn it isn't gets to pick which unit fights first after you've finished all the charging units, it's really useful for charging into an existing combat. So if you've got a combat that's going on between two units already, you know that your opponent has the choice to pick their unit first before you can. Whereas if you charge the armor of Russ in there, you can then say, well, you can't fight at all. Because...
And I'm assuming the minutiae of the rules interactions are very much like AOS. So, for instance, if they have a unit that fights first in at the start of combat, because your ability is applied in your turn before them, it's now going to be it's going to supersede their ability. So two interacting rules normally in both 40k and Age of Sigmar, if you have two interacting rules, whoever's turn it is takes precedence.
It normally does that. But I don't know how much it contradicts it, just because you can still fight first, just fight first of all the other units, because you can't fight at all. It's not a question of when you fight, it's just you physically can't.
Oh, what, until all the other units have done
so? Until all the other units that are eligible for you have done so, yes.
Yeah. So it would supersede.
Someone will ask the question, though. But...
yeah. Well, no, it's the activation wars, but actually, just having had this conversation with you and thinking more about 40k generally, like, it is far more combat-centric than it's ever been. So these interactions are going to occur more, which is quite exciting. And I do love the idea, Tom, of piling in 6 inches, heroically intervene 6 inches with a guy, and then being like, oh yeah, you charge, but now you fight last. Do you know what I mean? Like, they charge onto your objective, into a unit, you heroically intervene 6.
Yeah, just charge your armor press. Unlucky. Never mind. That's okay.
Who would you put this on? Because you would want to put this on, like, you want to put this on a beefy character who's going to go into units, right?
I mean, we'll have a look when we get to the data sheets in a couple of weeks from, I guess. But in the meantime, I always used to stick him on like a Thunderwolf cavalry guy who would just run around the board just being a dickhead.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. Only last couple of things now. We've got the psychic powers, and we've already been through the secondaries. So with the psychic powers, the first
one
I
noted are they psychic powers or are they priestly ways?
No, these are psychic powers.
Aren't Space Wolves pretty anti-psyker?
Yes.
Yeah. But they're not psychers, are they? They're not psychers. They're
It's not. It's the weird. They use the weird. They don't use
weird.
They don't use the warp. They use the weird.
The weird.
So the first thing I went to look for was Jaws of the World Wolf. It still sucks, which makes me very, very sad.
Okay.
Rob never got to experience the old Jaws of the World Wolf.
I did play it in 7th, by the way.
Yeah, but that wasn't really it. So in the 5th edition book, which lasted through 6th edition, I think start of 7th edition, Jaws of a World Wolf was a psychic power where it was basically a 24-inch beam or something. It was 18 inches. I know it was 18 inches. And all units used to have this thing called an initiative value. And if you rolled over it, so basically for every model that this beam passed through, you roll a dice. And if you rolled over your opponent's initiative value, the model itself went down a hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, slain. Yeah.
And if you were a monster or a vehicle, you got a +1 to whatever roll. You got a +1 to the roll.
Right.
So basically, you drop down in a drop pod with this guy with Jaws, and you'd send 2 Riptides and 2 Tervigons down a hole.
Fun.
It was fun.
Fun. I'm really glad all those days are over.
Don't take Riptides. Stop playing Tau. Fuck off. It's pretty simple.
I mean,
but it was more like you'd rock up to the table. It's like, here's the 1 dice that's going to send you Riptide down the hole. You remember the tension when you're rolling this dice?
Pretty high.
I mean, if beam this through like a unit and there's a character in initiative 5, and if you roll that 6, that character's going straight down the hole.
Unfortunately, it doesn't do it anymore.
No, it doesn't. It's very sad. Very disappointing.
But what did you like from the Tempestas?
So Stormcaller was fine.
Tempestas?
It has a warp charge value of 6, and if manifested until the start of the next psychic phase, while the unit is within 6 inches of the Psyche, all friendly models receive benefits of light cover within 6 inches. It's exactly the same wording as the stratagem that gives you the -1 to be hit, which is Cloaked by the Storm. So you can stack Stormcaller with Cloaked by the Storm. I feel like that was intentional. And then you can basically just stack the buffs massively onto your army, so you got the light cover and the -1 to be hit. You've also got Murderous Hurricane, which I quite like. It is 18-inch range, warp charge value of 6, and you cast it on one enemy unit. And if that unit is not wholly or on or within a terrain feature, that unit cannot fight Overwatch. And in the fight phase, that unit is not eligible to fight until after all Space Wolves units from your army have done so.
Normally, so another way to do that.
Yeah, also, and it also is one of those things that stops Overwatch. So that's really, really useful in some cases where it just takes away an option that your opponent has. It's not as useful as it was when everything was doing it anyway, but it's one of those things where you're just taking your options away from your opponent again. Normally, I'd have an issue with the 18-inch range, but I don't here specifically because it's Space Wolves. So if you're managing to get 18 inches into my army, then I've probably already lost the game anyway.
Yeah. Okay,
So
yeah.
it's not really a massive deal for me. And those are pretty much just like a powers I like.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Good. I think the ability to make something strike last again, or another part of the board, is excellent. So like, or let's say you lose that character that's doing it for you already, so some redundancy in your list to do something. But like, I do picture in my head now like a big multi-charge, like turn 2, turn 3, putting a load of combat units into your opponent's army, and then just being like, cool, I've shut down a lot of your ability to like counterattack early.
Well, also, if you just stay there, you're getting loads of points.
That's also true. That's also true.
Just stay there, lol.
That's also true. It's a good setup. It's a good setup for, like, in my head now, like, when we go and look at whenever we get to it, when we look at data sheets, which we'll do in another show, which is normally what we do when we talk about roles. So we talk about units in the book and the roles. I am very tempted to see what units I can stack all these, like, combat buffs into and put forward, and how I can control that board space. But I do worry about there being no necessary buffs to shooting, like, to control, if that makes sense. Like, I would like some sort of output, like, in the shooting phase, but maybe it doesn't need it. Maybe it doesn't need it. And then thinking about the Death Watch, like, yes, when you get there, you probably do more damage coming out of the Space Wolves, but the Death Watch, I feel, because of, like, the Warlord trait and the Psychic Power, are just going to be able to survive longer.
We also have more ways to do it, so it's not like you just do a few things and then you shut it down, right?
Yeah.
Space Wolves, again, they're very honest about what they do. They do it, and then either it works or it doesn't. With Death Watch, you have more options, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Very interesting. Twitch chat, what are you thinking? And any questions? Question from Mamdare. Is Tom's background when we camped and he was dead by Rob's hands?
Yes.
Yeah. Great time. It was a great time had by all.
Yeah.
Primark. I've just finished 6 days of viral food poisoning. I find the Tempest ass is causing me flashbacks.
Oh dear.
Yeah, because who does that? Who does? I'm going to use my psychic power from Tempest ass. No, like you were talking about the names, Tom. Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. Tempestas. Is that the Italian version?
Tempestas. Yeah. But what are you going to cast? Which one did you like? Tempest Wrath.
It was a Murderous Hurricane I quite like, and Stormcaller.
Stormcaller. Murderous Hurricane. Yeah. Yeah, because you normally just, I'm going to cast a Psychic Power and it does this, as opposed to, I'm going to cast Murderous Hurricane, right?
Yeah. Decent. Stormcaller and then Cloaked by the Storm. It's almost like a match made in heaven as well. Perfect.
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah. I like that. That was really fun. And I know, like, the Blood Angels book is out, and really they're both vying for a foothold in the, like Mamdo said in the chat, they're vying for a foothold in who's going to be the combat-orientated army inside of the game. I would argue between the two. At least for Marines, maybe White Scars are in there as well. But I feel like the addition of the 3d6 charge and the loss of the 3d6 charge of Blood Angels helps Space Wolves a bit, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, could do. We'll have to see. I want to test some stuff out with the successors as well, because I feel like you're not losing massive amounts. Especially,
it feels like it's in a much stronger place than the first Space Wolf book, last year.
Oh, yeah, it's also much more fun. Holy moly, dude. The only time I could actually enjoy the other one was when I was playing Imperial Knights with some Space Wolves in it.
Just there. They were just there, hanging out. Oh, okay. All right. That's pretty good. Well, Tom, thanks for this today.
No problem at all. We'll have to do some more next week, if you want.
Will. Yeah, no, I'd love to. Love to. Now, I know, obviously, Blood Angels out, Death Guard soon. Tom, you got any thoughts on Blight drones and Blight haulers, and mainly Demon Engines? Shout out to all my Chaos fans. Demon Engines hitting on 3 pluses, not 4 pluses. And
that'd be cool.
I think about it. Playburst crawlers used to be 4s, and then if you moved, I think they ignored it. I think it was always 4s.
They did ignore it. It was always 4s.
They ignored it. But now 3s. Moving, like, that's significant, right?
They're still pretty inconsistent because we've got D6 shots, right? I need to have a proper look at it because I'm still trying to catch up with books. Like, we've got 4 codexes down here. In fact, no, I don't. I have 3 because the Death Watch one was out of stock.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like there's a reason for that. So I need to keep up with these books. It's just a bit like one book a month was too much for me. Now I've got 2 books a month, and I'm just like, oh, well, I'm dying. So,
Mm.
we'll
I think
keep up.
one of the nice bits is you can throw a lot of stuff in the bin mentally. You can go through it once, and then you can just start picking out those. I think you can pick out the core mechanics. Now, what really happens is when someone deep dives a book. That's the difference between, like, if I'm allowed to just go on a little ramble for a second. One of the things that I've done for Age of Sigmar, for when I do like especially commentating, like generally there's like a sub faction that's very, very strong, or a couple, and there's some key core mechanics around how an army will inherently play very well competitively, and it's learning to pick those elements out and then build stuff around that, and that's your like most commonplace thing. For example, like with KO and Barak Ziflin, like there's a lot of like I redeploy turn 1, I drop a warp lightning vortex, and then I teleport back out. Yeah, like it's a core mechanic, but ultimately it's just really a gimmick. And actually, if you look at the core mechanics, there are other things inside the book, because the gimmick can be lost, and all you need to do is know about the gimmick. For instance, like Vect was a gimmick, right?
Yes, it was. Yeah,
like it isn't how Drakari played. It was just a gimmick they had.
A thing that you had to respect. It was the same with the Death Watch stratagems. You need to make sure that you understood what they could do against your specific army if you were playing Xenos.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think there's a thing right there. So yeah, one of the things that I took away, especially with these new codexes, if I've got any advice to give at all for anyone, is like look for those power picks and then just kind of like put them into a document or into your own mental headspace. Because I was happened to run into the wonderful Jervis Johnson about a year and a half ago. There's a cinema just near me, but it's also like a cafe called Broadway. He was in there. I was at the bar. He was at the bar. Obviously, we used to work together. I said hi. We were having a little talk, and he was talking about system mastery. And he was saying that's one of the things that, like, as rules guys, they're really trying to like get on top of. Like, how do you develop system mastery?
Are you sure?
What do you mean?
Are you sure?
What?
Well, like a game should be easy to master and like easy to play and hard to master, right?
Yes.
This seems like it's one of those where it is easy to play, but you need to like track down all the rules and like have some.
Oh no, I agree with you. I don't. If anything, like that conversation has led me to think that they're intentionally making it impossible to create system mastery. Like, my argument would be
system mastery isn't the same as learning lots of rules.
Exactly.
And I had this discussion. We might have this discussion this week, right? I was talking about this in the WhatsApp chat. Just knowing all the rules doesn't mean that you're good at breaking down what they are and what they mean.
Exactly. Like, Mamdo in the chat has just pointed out, like, one of the things that we jumped to this book, or we kind of really talked about, was how applicable that heroic intervention is. Like, and like you know it, but applying it is very different. And actually knowing what the key strengths of a book is, and then their application, I think there's like, you don't need to learn everything, because, or you do, you should read through it all, know it, and then just be like, well, I'm going to get rid of a bunch of that crap because I'm never going to use that relic, so I don't need to know about it, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Well, listen, Tom, pleasure. Twitch chat.
Thank you very much for having me. Always good fun.
Nothing but a pleasure. Tomorrow is going to be maybe an extended hobby hangout, or at least, I don't know, like, we might be on air for a couple of hours. It doesn't mean that everyone who's going to be on the show is, but Dayton's going to be on, John's going to be on. We're just going to be hanging out, doing some painting and shooting the shit. It's meant to be a really chill day, so get yourself some paints, have a chat, we'll talk some questions, we'll just shoot the breeze, which I'm very, very excited about. It's going to be really fun. And next week we've got loads more stuff. So, Tom, thanks loads. Twitch chat, thanks loads. Everyone on the Honest War Game Patreon, I bow to thee. And everyone on the podcast, please drink loads of water. I actually didn't drink enough yesterday, and I ended up getting a little bit ill. So, keep yourself. It's because it's winter, right? So I'm just having a lot of warm drinks, and I'm not drinking enough water. So, anyway, try and take my advice. Loads of love is what I'm going to say. Thanks for listening to Honest Wargamer, and have a great day.